Everybody familiar with the chop and lift as exercises? There's a couple of different ways to do the chop and lift. Chopping and lifting come to us from the PNF patterns. How many people are aware of PNF patterns? PNF patterns are spiral and diagonal patterns of the body. On my website, graycook.com, I've listed a few great resources for PNF. If we look at the upper body PNF patterns, we have diagonal 1, diagonal 2, D1, D2. If we look at the patterns, there's both a extension and flexion part of the pattern going in almost an X. Well, if we break it down, that's a feeding pattern and that's a protection pattern. Protecting my head, getting me food. We got the same patterns with the lower body. And almost everything we do comes off those spiral and diagonal patterns. If we look at the anatomy, the orientation of the muscles is not linear. It follows a spiral and diagonal pattern. Now, if I combine my two upper body PNF patterns, the feeding pattern and the protection pattern together, then I'm doing reciprocal action, and that's a chop and lift. Chopping is the extension pattern. I'm extending. Lifting is the flexion pattern. You're going to be weaker in a lift than a chop simply because of gravity and small muscle groups taking you up. You've got to account for that. Let's go over just a few housekeeping things really quick. Early on, I said once you get a little change in mobility, once you loosen up somebody's shoulders, loosen up somebody's hips, you should do static stability before dynamic stability. Chopping and lifting, is that static or dynamic for the upper body? It's dynamic. Deadlifting, static or dynamic for the upper body? My shoulder really doesn't have much to do, just don't dislocate, right? Don't pop out of socket. So if we're training somebody's shoulder after we get them loosened up, would it be more appropriate to rush right into chopping and lifting or do some deadlifting first? Did you ever think about that? Our focus on the deadlift is so much on the hip and low back, we forget that it's a traction maneuver on the shoulder. Well, we learned this in neurology going through PT school. How do the babies learn to fire their stabilizers so well? Traction and compression of joints. When I pull your joint, it has reflexive stabilization. And when I compress your joint, it has reflex stabilization. Now, Zena's a little over 9 months right now. If she can get her hands on something, she's pulling up on it. Distraction. When she's got to move across the floor, she's commando or crawling. Compression. That's where we get the side planks from. That's where we get the quadruped diagonals from. But when people get in all fours and just say, well, I'm exercising the serratus, that's not what Zena's doing right now. She's trying to get across the floor so she can get that fur ball in her mouth before I beat her to it. She's using it purposefully for locomotion. She's not blindly rehearsing a concentric contraction for 3 sets of 10 reps, hoping her serratus gets stronger. Got it? I'm going to show you chopping and lifting and deadlifting. As you see me doing chopping and lifting, you're going to see us do some hip positions. What are our hip positions? Half kneeling is one knee down. Tall kneeling is both knees down. I'm going to show you some options. We already established this is dynamic for the upper body, but what is it for the lower body? Static. Keep your pelvis level. People with tight hip flexors who want to engage, go there. The minute you see them go there, this is no longer a static hip drill. It is only a static hip drill if you say do all the work with your arms, pull down and across your body, and finish it. And if you can maintain the integrity of your hip position during that maneuver, then you have static stability. The question you should all be asking is, what's it look like when I go this way and this way? Because you'd be surprised. You find somebody who can't do a push-up. You put them in this position, The hip position is much like a push-up. They chop this way. Spot on. Here's what I want you to say. Same two arms. Why did you struggle so hard down into the left and look so crisp and efficient down into the right? Your same arms were both engaged. What's the difference? And they'll say, well, I just feel awkward to this side. It doesn't feel natural to that side. If you had made them side plank on this side and this side, you'd have seen about a 40% difference. But believe it or not, this has more carryover than side planking. So learning to engage. There's lots of different platforms for chopping and lifting. I can do it on one knee, both knees. But here's the thing that nobody understands. The first time you do it, it's to magnify a left-right difference or expose the fact that they can't hold static posture. And too many people miss that opportunity to get the client to have an aha moment and say, oh my gosh, I'm so good going that way on this knee, and I'm so wobbly going that way. Because the minute they state that back to you, you got all the street cred in the world for finding a crack in the armor, and you're going to have plenty of compliance, because when most people find a deficiency or a dysfunction, they want medicine for it. This is the medicine for it. So chopping and lifting is first and foremost a way to magnify core asymmetries. And if you think about this, we've divided the core into 4 pattern quadrants. This is what I explained to Tim Ferriss, and you've got 4 articles on this in the back of your manual. Here are the quadrants. Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, Quadrant 4. Great. Which muscles are responsible for Quadrant 1? The internal, the external obliques, the TA, or the pelvic floor? Yes, they are. All the muscles are engaged all the time. The timing, sequence, and coordination with which you use them determines the efficiency. I'm not trying to find out where the anatomical problem is. I'm trying to find out, why can't I get into this quadrant? It could be I don't stabilize my hip. It could be I don't close down my core. Stay here. It will work itself out. Between sets, breathe. You want to go do some shoulder presses? Guess what? Right back over here, half kneeling chops to the left. That's how we do it. That's how we introduce the corrective strategy. You can now go back and explain to yourself, your coworkers, and your clients how kneeling, chopping, and lifting is an entry-level hip exercise and a moderate to advanced level upper body exercise. And with the same confidence, you can explain to them that, believe it or not, a deadlift is a fundamental shoulder exercise and a moderate to advanced hip exercise because of what segment is dynamic and what segment is static. Getting those elbows on the ground, if you believe in all the planking and quadruped work, then why aren't you doing traction to these shoulders? Because that's the other part of the diet they're missing. Traction and compression help that joint, especially the upper body. Now, I'm not saying there's not benefits in the lower body. We've seen the inversion and stuff like that, but it's significantly greater in the shoulder because the shoulder experiences both traction and compression. The hips pretty much work under a compressive load most of the time, or unloaded but never really traction. So if they're going to get traction, it's through movement and different muscles. What I want to do is let you see chopping and lifting. And if you'll look over here, these are the movement patterns in the functional movement screen that are supported by this functional exercise. It may be a corrective measure, and it may be one of the correctives you do, but once you get it, it's one of the best ways to maintain. However, I'm constantly vigilant with my athletes, with my clients, is seeing, is there an imbalance? Is there a weakness? Find an appropriate weight and have them do a rep out. When they lose position, get sloppy, or get fatigued, that's when you call it. If there's a greater than 10% difference of doing reps, you've identified a deficiency in chopping. Now you got a new thing to work on. Tall kneeling puts the hips in a symmetrical position. So we can get dynamic stabilization on the shoulder on what we call an equal and level pelvis. The two symmetrical patterns in the functional movement screen are squatting and pushing up. Under both those patterns is integrity and static stability in what we call a level pelvis. When we switch it to a half kneeling platform, we've really biased that hip. We definitely want you to have some support, some cushioning under there. And a lot of people say, what's the appropriate position for the back foot? I've seen people who have really sloppy hips but very strong feet. If I let your toes remain there, you can get a little stability from there. So if you truly want to see what's going on with the hip, do that. If they become more wobbly, keep them there. If it doesn't make a difference, it's no big deal. They can train wherever they want. But if you put somebody there and everything changes, they were using that foot actively for support. Is this an exercise for the foot and knee, or is this an exercise for the hip and pelvis? The foot and knee are out of this. If somebody can't balance on one leg and you put them here and they look great, then there's a good chance it's their ankle, foot, and knee that are the problem with single leg stance. But if you put them here and they're equally sloppy, you just identified a hip and core problem of why they have poor single leg stance. Not really necessary to stand on one foot and do chops and lifts, but we can bias one foot and unweight the other. The higher we lift it, the less weight's going to be on it. And what we want to do is down and across the body. When we have half kneeling or standing, we're always what we call chopping to the open side. The hip that's up, that's the closed side. Chop to the open side, lift to the closed side, and that's the way we do it. The other question that comes up is, why do you use a cable bar? We don't want the weakest link of a chop and lift to be your arms or shoulders. Many times, especially working with somebody who hasn't done a lot of upper body training, we will find a false positive. Their deficiency is just because of arm and shoulder strength, not because of the core quadrant we're trying to look at. So by putting both hands on the bar and executing the 4 quadrants, chopping and lifting, what we really do is disadvantage the core. Because I don't care whether you're holding onto a boat paddle or you're raking leaves, you're going to have back pain the next day if you haven't done it in a while. Same thing with shoveling. That's when your core is the disadvantage. So we like to start chopping and lifting with the bar. If you don't have any quadrant weakness, and if you've got an entry-level degree of strength, especially if you're a golfer, tennis player, baseball player, you're in a field or court sport, we might start with the rope handle and let you start involving the upper body spiral and diagonal. But first and foremost, I got to make sure you can handle the patterns 2 arms against 1 core. Then we let the arms and wrists go independent. Okay? Yep. Yes, it does. The question was, does the variability, if I were to do this with a band as opposed to, say, a Kaiser, free motion, stack weighted device. Now, the great thing about Kaiser and most of your pulley systems is you can pull them fast. The reason we like bands is no matter how hard we yank them, we don't have an inertia problem. We're not going to have one there, and I don't know if you know it, but most of the stack weights now are a 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio. That means I can pull them 4 foot, the stack only moves a little bit. Now, it makes the weight less, but it also reduces inertia. So once people know how to do this, we like to see a little bit of speed in there. We don't need to see too much speed, because if I want to see really fast power, I hand you a medicine ball and say, bang it on the ground. Let me see how high it bounces on each side, and I can find your power deficiency there. So we migrate really quickly from this stuff to half kneeling, slam that medicine ball. My high school athletes, sometimes we don't have enough time to run them all through this, but we can basically put them half kneeling, take them right to the field, bunch of med balls. Here's where everybody makes a mistake. I got a 6-pound med ball, and everybody's like, wow, we're going to go up in weight. Don't. Just let some air out of it. If their job is to slam it on the ground and see it bounce 10 foot, or we're trying to bounce it over a partner's head standing right there, whack, and I let some air out of it on a Tuesday night and you're playing with it on Wednesday, you think you got weaker overnight. Now I'm going to get more out of you, because when we start throwing med balls, it ain't about the weight, it's about the velocity and power. People don't learn to break boards by putting wrist weights on their arm. They learn to break boards by moving their hand friggin' fast. And so when we give you a med ball, I need you to give me 100% velocity. And one of the ways that I can keep you from sandbagging, same weight, less bounce. It really engages the young athlete, and you got to realize somebody who's had a hip or knee problem, somebody who's recovering from low back pain, somebody who hasn't exercised in a while, we like all these chop and lift variations. With kids, you go to half kneeling right away, give them a medicine ball, they may have 2 awkward days, they'll work it out on the fly. The question goes back to the band. Whenever possible, when you're teaching chopping and lifting, have consistent resistance through the arc of motion. Once somebody knows how to do it, give them a band if they're going to do some supplementation or homework. This whole thing sort of came to me one time when one of my colleagues from University of Miami was actually traveling with the women's tennis tour. She goes, we got a different gym every other week. And so we started developing the Ray Cook band that Perform Better carries right now with the 2 handles and those spiral diagonal. You always got a hotel room door. But the problem is most people would make it too light. By the time you get to here, you need to be friggin' struggling. That's how tight a band needs to be if you're going to use it for strength work. If I'm using it for stability work, then the people who have a sloppy hip are going to have enough balance and control problem just trying to stay in the center of their half-kneeling stance. So if I were teaching this, I would avoid a band unless it's the only option I had. Don't forget that you can provide manual resistance. I can basically hold that stick and we can sort of play a little game right there too. But the band is going to be one of the most user-friendly things if you're working with a small group and have a way to attach it, or somebody's going to do some home supplementation. So it's not if one is better than the other, it's when in the progression. That's going to help people learn better, but the band's going to be more accessible. Yep. You're going to actually run into a problem right here. It's going to cause you, watch what my back has to do. I'm going to pull down and across, and I'm going to have to do that. And the whole purpose of the way we're doing this thing is to really spot on hold stability. Now, a lot of people have these big functional chops and lifts. They're doing that. Once you have resolved all those quadrant problems, if you choose to do that, if you can carry that over to some side, it's fine. But literally, your natural pattern is here. That's the natural pattern. And secondly, most people in this position want to what? They want to give up. This is actually harder. See, this locks me in. Right now, I have the option to what? Give up my hip and rotate through my hip. Here, my hip is locked in place, so if I look stable, it could just be because I'm mechanically stacked. Where this side, it's easy to drop my pelvis anytime. When I'm doing a lift, I've taken my low back out of it. So if I do a lift up in here, I'm clearing my upper T-spine. So I take my low back out of a lift and I make my core stabilized during a chop. We don't just X this out arbitrarily. It's not only less than natural, it's actually harder when it gets heavy to chop to this side, because right about here, it's real easy to do that. Get your hips in. And so we'll do stuff like I will put a foam roll right here and say, make contact. I'll have a cone, a little traffic cone behind their butt with a tennis ball on it. I'm like, tennis ball hits the ground, rep don't count. So it's really about owning the pelvis and learning just like that. And so this is, believe it or not, the harder way to do it for a chop. That's actually going to make you exploit and use all the shoulder and T-spine mobility you got doing the lift. So many people get excited about this. They do way more chops than lifts. And I would recommend starting teaching both chops. If you see asymmetries there, clean them up. Then move into the lift. I'm going to tell you one more story about this. Had a football player came to our clinic one time. Completely reconstructed shoulder. We tested his rotator cuff. 30% weakness on external rotation compared to that shoulder. 40 to 50% weakness internal rotation. Bi and tri were both 20% down. Serratus, lower trap, all those tests, about 40, 50% down. Now, the physician knew of our work, and the kid had come from quite some ways because he was in college, but he was in our hometown. We had him over the summer. We only had 2.5 weeks. And over 2.5 weeks, we really only had about 5 visits to see him. His only thing he did were chops and lifts and single-arm deadlifts. We did no supplementation whatsoever, because in a 2-hand chop and lift, the good arm teaches the bad arm. Exploiting all the quadrants and working the weak quadrants didn't just say you got a weak bi and tri, it said you don't even use the pattern right. So am I reconnecting this shoulder with his brain? Or am I just blindly doing bicep curls? We intentionally did no supplementary training of any of his isolated deficits. But my responsibility as a therapist is I test in this position to show an isolated deficit. It does not mean that I got to train in this position. Training can be much more involved. So here's what we did. Over those 5 visits, we basically were doing double leg, single arm deadlifts, single leg, single arm deadlifts, chops and lifts with a straight bar. We got every deficit below 10% without isolation in only 5 visits. Kid was post-surgical. Only caveat right there, his shoulder was pain-free and he had good range of motion. I fed him a functional diet and he overwrote all of his deficiencies. Don't supplement unless you have to. Too many of us, we see an isolated deficit, we think we got to isolate it. We don't. That's not the way Zena's working out her deficits right now. She's doing them on a functional platform. Lift variations real quick. You're going to see mirror images of what you just saw. And you're going to see the test over here that help with that. It's a combination of a pull and a push. You are pulling the weight to you and then pushing it forward. So the pull is actually the top hand here. The push is the bottom hand. Punch the sky is the command. Please, it is not a sweep. If I handed you a lot of weight, you would keep it close to your body. Whether you're cleaning it, deadlifting it, whatever. Same thing with the stick. Pull, push. Keep it close to your body. If I see somebody not doing that, I get right up in their space and say, you shouldn't hit me. They have to chop right across there. Go ahead and get set up, and we're going to talk through some chopping and lifting. Now I'm going to coach Brad on the fly. Brad is one of our strength coaches with only the exercises you've seen here, a little bit of physical therapy on the front end. He took one of the best collegiate golfers this year who really had almost had a train wreck. He had some stress fractures in his spine. He was going to miss his whole senior season as a college golfer. And just by basically getting him through some good therapy first and then reconstructing his stability, chopping and lifting and deadlifting, this kid had an unbelievable senior year, one that I think made some record books. Simply doing a few exercises well, in many cases, is worth doing a variety of exercise and sampling a bit of everything. Brad, go ahead and give us a few half-kneeling chops. Notice, Brad's keeping the belt line level, the pelvis level. And once I see that chop, I've got a couple of ways I can disadvantage him. What's one way I can disadvantage Brad right here? Put that foot out. I'm going to take that foot away from you. There you go. A little bit of disadvantage right there. Any muscle tension in his ankle cannot be realized by what he's doing on the ground. All right, give me another disadvantage. When I say narrow your base, Brad, what I'm going to say is your front foot comes in front of your back knee. Some of your clients won't be able to handle the narrow base. And believe it or not, it's always better to test half kneeling before you ever get here. They can go half kneeling anywhere. You can hand them a kettlebell, they can do a halo, you can whip tennis balls at their head. It doesn't really matter. But check half kneeling before you expect half kneeling to be exploited in an exercise. You may find that they can on one side, they can on the other side. That means all you really got to work on is half kneeling right now. Give them 2 dowels to balance and say, okay, kick one out, hold your balance, kick one out. Just learn to balance there. You have no idea how much work that is for somebody that can't. They do not need to bother themselves with the formality of the chop. We got his ankle out of it. We got a narrow base. All right, Brad. Good. Before I disadvantage him further, I'm satisfied with the weight. I might just let him do a rep out. I want him to breathe, and I also need him to sit this stack down every time. Don't think 1 set of 5. Think 5 sets of 1. Here's why. He's got to re-engage. If there's tension on this, guess what he's going to do? He's going to hang from it. He's going to lean on it. He's going to use it as a point of stability. This is his point of stability, and there should be no question in his mind about that point of stability. So if he's hanging from this because it's still under load, and I haven't finished that, if I had this up here, that cable would still be loaded. Make him start and stop the movement. All his mistakes are going to be on the start or on the stop, not in between. That's where that reflex stabilization is important. So let's find another one. Good. One other thing I want you to see, go ahead and hold the bottom position. Everybody's going to be a little different here. And see this cable? It should land right in line with his arm. If Brad is here, that cable is not in line with his joint. If Brad is down here, that cable is not in line with his joint. So one of the best pieces of feedback you can give for them is they should, at the finished position, have a level pelvis, head is up, and they should know where that cable is, right in line with the force. That means we're stacking that shoulder. We're planking that shoulder. Let it back up. As we're doing chops and lifts, as soon as Brad shows me a competent chop here, and I've got the narrow base and I've got the ankle out of it and we've got a good line, the very first thing I do is I want to know what you got on the other side. So we would basically do the mirror image of this on the other side. If I don't see any discrepancies, I've got two choices. I could go up and wait, or I could investigate his lifts. Here, I'm probably knowing Brad's a golfer. The golf swing isn't just this. We've got a lift in there too. So I want to look at his left and right lifts. If I see that all four quadrants are pretty much symmetrical, we may go up and wait. Or if his movement screen said, you know what, he doesn't have problems with the lunge. Split hips aren't where his issue is. It's when both hips are in the same position. That comes off his push-up and squat. And you did have a 1 on your squat, didn't you? We may see more problems with his chop between the left and right side, tall kneeling. Tall kneeling position, the base doesn't have to be that narrow because I made his base narrow front to back, not side to side. His big problem here is going to be that way or that way. He still might be challenged to stick his butt out, but now I'm going to look at that left-right chop and lift from this position right here. Okay? Any questions about what we're doing right there? You got it. If their biggest issues involve an asymmetrical hip position, then I'm probably going to do half kneeling because it's not just a core problem, it's a hip/core problem. Whereas in just good old shoulder mobility, squatting, and pushing up, the pelvis is in a stable and symmetrical position regarding the hips, and I should be able to find the asymmetry without splitting the hips. Their movement screen actually determines which one of these I investigate. If you had to pick, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck in half kneeling than tall kneeling. But if the only issue you got in the movement screen is a push-up, you will literally get people engaging their trunk and learning the push-up quicker from this position. Have you ever watched a baby tall kneeling? They find the coffee table. They're down on their knees. What's the first thing they do? They press into the table. They unweight. They come to there. So it's that transition that helps them get up, and they're going to get up with a squat or a lunge. Having that previous information really helps me dial in. The one neat thing about having that movement screen is the time's the same. Whether I investigate all of Brad's chopping and lifting or I do a 10-minute screen first, either way I'm going to wind up at the one he needs. But if I do the screen first, I'm going to find a bunch of other stuff too. If you'll set up same position but give me both handles, and we're going to advance this up because he's a golfer, and if I get him symmetrical, just switch to that side. We're going to show you the spiral and diagonal movement with the handles. Now he's got a few options. Half or tall, it doesn't matter here. Setup's very important, and that's why he's basically adjusting his foot position accordingly, because I'm going to use this in this angle as a demonstration to show you. We got a few options. Grab the T handle first. We can just grab it like that, and we can pull it to his sternum, and then we can finish the press. You start with your palms together, and you finish with the backs of your hands together. But that may not challenge him quite enough. So let's turn that handle vertical. We're going to get even a little bit more wrist action in there. Now the weakest link of this move is actually, in some cases, his forearm. I wouldn't want to find that weak link if he's still got one with the stick. Stick first, and then split those handles up. Let me get you back over here, Brad, and I'm just going to show them a couple of things about cantering the chop and lift. I wrote about this in Athletic Body and Balance, and actually this cable bar comes with a DVD that's going to show you how to do a lot of this stuff. Brad right now is doing a chop pretty much straight across his body. What if I turn Brad a little more toward the front row? So you can't do yourself, the machine stays the same place. Go ahead and stack your hands. Good. Always get really close to the axis. You would never choke down to here, because when we get to there, look at all the leverage that's on him. Stay close to the point of rotation. So really reach up. And I like to start people almost in an uncomfortably tall position and see if they lose it. Not something they can't reach, it just really makes them use their range of motion. Because I changed the position of his body, and because I want him to feel the cable along this arm, watch where his finished position is now. Don't wrap it, keep it out in front of you. Go ahead and finish it the other way. Never wrap yourself with the cable. As soon as the cable is kissing that elbow, you're done. So this chop, because of the way I turned him, is biasing what? More anterior chain or posterior chain? He's putting it in front of him. And so this is trying to pull him backwards. So he's basically avoiding hyperextension right here. So I can bias that. Now, it's also exploiting the fact that Brad's got pretty good shoulder range of motion. Bring it back up. Great shoulder range of motion, and I'm exploiting that anterior plank musculature. What happens if Brad turns 3 clicks toward me? You may have a client that doesn't have full shoulder range of motion. I just took that shoulder out of top dead center and brought it forward, didn't I? I took the stress off shoulder mobility, so you can only exploit the mobility they got. And if they've got a permanent restriction, you can't go much further than that. So by cantering his body, now take it down and across, but wind up with the cable not wrapped. Now he's got to take it more behind him. He's really having to use some of that posterior and lateral chain to do this. The chop and lift is not just a setup where you're pulling down and across your body. We can canter him forward or backward based on his shoulder motion availability or the part of his trunk that we want to bias. The only thing I'm going to ask you for is if they're not keeping that pelvis level, we're almost defeating the purpose of doing this. It's not how much upper body strength can you show me, it's how much upper body strength can you show me with a narrow base kneeling on ice. We use this for a lot of young athletes that have developed arm and leg strength, but we want to take it back to the center. So once again, dynamic shoulder, static hip. We disadvantage by taking the foot and ankle out, by narrowing the base, adjusting position and range of motion. When I find somebody who could do crunches for 4 months but can't do a deadlift, I might try to juice the posterior chain here. If I find somebody who's very weak on any core engagement stuff anteriorly, I may actually use the one that makes them engage their abs more. So you've got a couple of variations. I'm not saying you have to do an isolated one with certain people. Let me take one more question about the chop and lift if you got one. Almost 100% on the down knee. When Brett Jones and I are teaching this, Brett even will go so far as to say, once you're in the position, you should be able to lift the front foot a little bit. Now, I see a lot of people do it like this. How's that? And I'm like, you know, the first part of yoga is if I want to lift this foot, I got to take some weight off of it, right? So watch. This slow weight shift, foot comes up. The weight shift comes before the lift. Everybody get why we put that rotary stability test in the movement screen? Remember that? You're right here, and we say lift both sides, and people go, you're freaking nuts. You're freaking nuts. You're nuts for trying to lift this while there's weight still on it. Now, a 3-year-old knows not to do that. Where do we lose that? Where do we lose that? We no longer climb in the gym. They're not pegboards. They're not rope ladders. A suspended push-up ain't off the ground training. It's just an airborne push-up. Your feet are still on the ground. It's good stuff. But we used to climb. We used to be all over the place. We used to have huge grip strength. And so when we were crawling and climbing in our training, the rotary stability test, I'm not checking to see if you can lift this. I'm checking to see if you intuitively know shifting 100% of your weight to this side allows this side to float. And if you don't have that intuitive body knowledge, that's something I want to pick up in the screen because that's something we can help you get back. One more thing I want to talk to you about chop and lift as we're going back to that. There's a lot of individuals who have a client that can't chop or lift. And when a client can't do chopping or lifting, one of the things we run into is we think just because they can't get their knee down, we can't do this. Sometimes what we do is offer them a lift. And we find out the reason they can't go into half kneeling isn't because they can't handle the pressure on their knee. They can't handle the hip flexion here. So they get into a bind, they're very unstable. We drop it down to here. Oh, they can benefit from it. So this takes the ankle out of it. It reduces the stress on the up leg and still allows us to see this. So some of your clients that can't half kneel, it's got nothing to do with being on their knee. They can't handle the 90-0 position, but they can handle the 70-0 position or the 60-0 position. The true benefit of this half kneeling is it helps you isolate the hip and core so you can see if it's truly a hip and core problem or more of a knee, ankle, and foot problem. That's the beauty of that situation. Let's look at a few deadlifts real quick. I get the honor of having Dan John in the front row here. I can put him on the spot anytime and say if people would work on their deadlift more, they'd have less issues in their squat, right? I don't know why we gave up the deadlift, why we don't do it, but simply rehearsing the deadlift, whether it be a straight bar, whether it be a kettlebell, whether it be something you're doing with dumbbells, suitcase position, it doesn't matter. The deadlift, believe it or not, is something you will do intuitively early on. Squatting is a natural pattern, but it's used to investigate things and change position. We don't learn how to load the squat until we realize how strong our legs are, but we're deadlifting naturally long before we squat. When we have young athletes looking ugly in the squat rack and they can't do their hang cleans, simple solution, delete those two exercises, let's own the deadlift. The exact same thing is true for your aging population. Bone density is a big issue. Well, if we never load them, Wolff's Law doesn't kick in, which says the bone is basically going to own up to the stress you put on it. Even if somebody doesn't do any other resistance training in a given week and everything they do is pool-based or cardio, teaching them a deadlift, even if it's range of motion limited, is about the best resistance they can do. Why? The shoulders engage statically, which reinforces what? Retraction and posture, and the hips are engaged dynamically, which reinforces core stability and balance. So even if you got a client where you barely do any resistance, you could easily justify from a metabolic standpoint, every muscle in my body is carrying this weight. Every muscle in my body is carrying this weight and managing this weight. From my fingertips to my toes. I don't have to isolate anything. I can't let you bend over more than your back integrity will allow. So even though you can touch your toes, that may be as far as you can go with a good back position. So that's where we're going to train your deadlift. Because believe it or not, the deadlift doesn't stress your joints. It stretches your muscles, it stresses your sort of fascial planes, but it doesn't overload the joints. Squatting and lunging do. That's why more people hurt in a squat or a lunge sometimes when they have poor joint alignment. Deadlift, as long as you do it within the competent range of motion, it's not only safe, you're going to load every muscle in the body, you're going to hit all the postural muscles, and you're going to have a good metabolic load. So I don't know why it's not used more, but maybe if I give you more variations, you'll see it. 2 kettlebell, 2-arm deadlift. I think the thing that's surprising to most people is look where those kettlebells wind up. They're hidden by his ankles. If you're lifting your dumbbells and your kettlebells off the front of your toes, you're doing it wrong. Okay? Most people, when they're learning to deadlift with a straight bar, they lose a little skin on their shins. And we like that because they're keeping it close to their center of mass. We didn't say bend out in front and pick something up. Secondly, we don't want to actively flex the knee, but we want a soft knee. We don't need vertical tibia, but I sure don't need your knee way out there like you're squatting. So you've got a soft amount of flexion in your knee, but for most people, their knee will only go as far forward as their midfoot. It won't even go anywhere near their toe. And if they got to get that knee all the way out there to get it, they're squatting the weight. They're not deadlifting it. Butt goes back. Knees don't go forward. Knees forward is a squat, butt back is a deadlift. Two arm, one arm, what's the difference? Well, if you're watching and letting your corrective exercise and or functional exercise magnify something, when Jessica lifts this, what if when she engages the kettlebell, as she's coming up, she has this counter rotation on one side? The definition of stability is not becoming mobile under stress. It's maintaining that integrity. So I'm going to look at her deadlifting competence on either side. And I'm not going to assume if she's sloppy on one side, it's just the shoulder. It might be everything that shoulder's stacked on. We've been playing with this for kettlebells for years, and when people have an asymmetry in their movement screen and they try a bottom-up kettlebell maneuver, they try to invert the kettlebell, they could have equal grip strength on either side, but on one side, they can't front squat this, they can't press it, they can't do anything. But their grip strength is the same. That means probably to me that they don't connect their shoulder to their grip, and they don't connect their shoulder to their pelvis, and they don't connect their pelvis to their foot. So when you basically pull up the kettlebell that's appropriate and just have somebody bottom up, hey, why don't you walk around with that for a minute? If they're having a hard time managing it on one side, first question is, do you have a weak grip? Do you have a weak forearm on the side? But if you test their grip and it's pretty competent both ways, then it's not the grip strength that's making them lose it. They aren't grounding this kettlebell to that foot. This whole column has an issue. We call that a high neural load. And for people who have great mobility but poor stability, their best warm-up is actually done with things that challenge their stability. They're going to look like a superstar going through their foam roll and flexibility stuff. But is that really what they need? So that bottom-up kettlebell is a high neural load. Single leg, double arm. This is pretty hard. And if you truly want to look at the integrity of hip extension and sort of load up one hip and find asymmetries, the double load is going to give you some feedback on hip strength. The double load, however, doesn't torque the body. It's a symmetrical load, isn't it? So you're balanced in the upper body, but we've got an imbalance in a small area in the lower body. If you had to do that with a range of motion limiter, you could easily do it right there. But I don't want you doing this if you can't touch your toes. I don't want you doing this if you can't balance on one foot. Those two things come before this. This is for capacity. Balancing on one foot or touching your toes is competency. Big difference. So don't expect a single leg deadlift to fix your balance. Bring good balance to a single leg deadlift and make your balance more functional and adaptable. Works in reverse sometimes. Believe it or not, this is a lighter load, but sometimes harder for people. Brett doesn't have a kettlebell in his left hand now. It's only a cross-body single leg deadlift, so it's right leg, left arm. A lot of people ask, well, can we do it right arm, right leg? There's no reason to do it in my wheelhouse. It's one of those wasted exercises for variety, because the minute you go down, what do? You open up this side. There's no integrity there. There'd be no reason to train that movement because it's not going to happen in real life. But when you see asymmetries, standing on right, lifting on left, and then standing on left, lifting on right, don't blame it on the glute medius. Please don't do that. Yes, there may be a weak glute medius, but there may be an overactive adductor. There may be a poorly engaged lat. There may be somebody who's disconnected from their grip and their shoulder stability. The pattern will refine the pattern. I made it through the 3-day RKC when I was 40 years old, and having a little conversation with Pavel toward the end, and he goes, go home, the kettlebell will teach you. Okay? Give me another book, give me another DVD. Nope. Go home and pick up the kettlebell. It will teach you. If we would be patient, and if we would do the move each day, don't overdo the move. Don't turn the move into a friggin' circuit. Own the move. Don't rent the move. Own it. And then frequency, intensity, volume, and go up in weight. And Pavel was absolutely right. You have enough information to train. Every other question is going to be an excuse to advance without competency. I love it. It's brilliant. It took me about 3 weeks to get it. And I called him on the phone. I was like, It taught me. It didn't say a word. You guys really have enough information to start doing some deadlifting. Don't start a deadlift if they don't have a comfortable and full toe touch. And if they can't balance on one foot for 10 seconds, probably advancing to a single leg deadlift would be inappropriate. However, there's some cool corrective stuff that will get them there in about a week. So you could use this. I need me a deadlift volunteer. You're eyeballing me, dude. I got to pick on you. I know that's not a pink shirt, it's salmon, right? Okay, got it. Yeah, Lee's got a few salmon shirts. I'm going to have you, first of all, just deadlifting this from between your ankles right there. Now, I haven't had the benefit to screen him. I really don't know if we'd be deadlifting in those shoes or not. Right there. If I had to define what's happening right there, he's doing the best he can, but he's sort of squatting that deadlift, isn't he? If he doesn't bend his knees, did you see how much he rounded his back? I can coach him all day long. I can bring Dan John up here. We can get in each ear and just hammer him. And if I make him go that far, his back is still going to round. You got no choice. Can you touch your toes? Okay, so there's no huge restriction here. If you can't touch your toes, you're actually going to fight that position. Can you balance on one leg? Okay, other side. You know the other reason why we should work on single leg stance? I don't know about California, but in Virginia, that's a field sobriety test. So if you're going to get locked up, at least earn it. You know what I mean? Don't. By the way, anybody seen the show Moonshiners? I think it's on History Channel or Discovery Channel or whatever. That's not near us. That's us. That's our zip code in Virginia. I'm not lying. You'll see both the policeman and the moonshiner in the restaurant at the same time. I think the whole thing might be staged. I'm not sure. All right, so here's what we do. Go there. I want you to hide that kettlebell from them. So that's how far I need you straddling that. You're still using a lot more squat than you need to, so now we can do that deadlift. But here's what I want you to do. Come back up, and I'm just going to work you through a drill that I want a lot of these people to bring to their coaching. First thing I want you to do is pretend like my hands are there the whole time. All right, so squeeze my hands. All right? Now, that might not be perfect, but he's using a lot of lat integrity. So here's the deal. If you can't get to the kettlebell, letting go of my hands is not an option. I'll just get you another step, okay? So keep my hands right there and figure out how to get to that kettlebell. Don't bend the knees so much. Stick that butt back. Stick that butt back. Stick that butt back. Okay? Come back up. You can bend the knees a little bit more. Stick that butt back. Stick that butt back. Stick that butt back. Stick it back. Stick it back. Get that kettlebell. Come back up. All right? My hands are still here. Don't let go of them. Let's see that again. Now, are you moving that kettlebell forward on me? And I didn't say to pick it up, did I? All right. You're coaching somebody the whole time they're thinking of picking it up. They're not thinking about setting up the position. Let me help you with that. You put your legs wherever you want them, then I'll put the kettlebell where it belongs. There you go. All right? Now, don't just pick it up from there. I need you to set it down there, okay? There's a little baby's hand right here and a little baby's hand right there. Don't you make the baby cry, all right? I didn't say pick it up. You're going to drive somebody crazy, but it's going to be one of the best deadlifting sessions they had. You just made a baby cry, dude. All right, we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. This time, get down, touch the kettlebell, and come back up. Good. 3 times. Now, don't even watch Brett Jones because he ain't that pretty. Watch right there. Good. Come back up. Butt is back, touching kettlebell. My hands are still here even though they're not, okay? That's 3 times. This time, grip the kettlebell, crush the handle. I didn't say pick it up. Why you got to lose that back to crush that handle? Come back up. Don't give up your shoulder. Get into your hips more. If I got to get you another level right here, we'll do it. There. He's still holding it. Come back up. 3 more of those. Crush that handle. If it breaks, we got another one. This is perform better, okay? Now here's what I'm doing. I'm creating a situation where he feels like a coiled spring when he's down there. It's easier to stand up with the weight than it is to get down. That's the whole beauty of it. If you set up right, you're a coiled spring. When you stand up, the kettlebell just goes for a free ride. All you got to do once you're up is set it back down the same way you got it up. So this time, get down, but I'm not going to let you lift it. Go down, keep that back, keep my hands right there, crush the handle, 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 crush the handle. Stay right there, keep breathing. Hey, that's not the way you're picking that up. I need to see white knuckles thumb. There you go, crush that handle. Don't give up the back to get there, or you can stand back up. If you coach your deadlift session like this the very first time, and you're adding layers as they need it, they're going to be relieved to lift the kettlebell. But they'll have also earned the right to do it, okay? One more time. Crush that handle, crush that handle, crush that handle, crush that handle. Keep my hand right there. Stand up. Good. I didn't say lift it. He's learning, okay? All right? Simon says. All right. One more time. One more time. Get on down there. Keep those arms engaged. Don't let those shoulders come out. Just right there. That's the only cue he needs. I've actually stood back here with a towel tucked in there and just pull on the towel a little bit. Lift that kettlebell. Good. Finish it. Oh. Finish it. Finish it. You're going to have to stand there for 10 minutes. Pick a position you like for 10 minutes. There you go. That's when you're finished. When your body is so aligned that if I got to stand here and talk about deadlifting and talk about a bunch of stuff, you got it right there. And believe it or not, if you come to me a week from now and say, I want to learn how to kettlebell swing, we're much closer to the integrity of that move. Not that the deadlift becomes a ballistic swing, but everything you need to do that slow and engaged is going to come into play at some point with true swings and alignment. We're not going to go single leg on you, okay? You earned it. Thanks. All right? Thank you. Yep. Probably. The amount of cushioning in that shoe, I don't care whether it's a size 15 or a size 7, most males' shoes are built for about 150, 160-pound male. So if you become a much heavier person just by engaging something, then that shoe was never designed to be a stable platform. It's designed for quick impact, but not long-term stability. So Vibram, Chuck Taylor, Cross Trainer, people say, well, there's a safety issue. I'm telling you, whether I'm barefoot or not, it ain't gonna make a difference. The only difference is the spray of blood will be contained in my shoe instead of on the front row. But you know, you could argue the safety issue. To me, the better argument is if I wear orthotics, if I've been given orthotics, go ahead and deadlift me in orthotics because they've been medically prescribed. I'm not supposed to be without them anyway. And chances are somebody has diagnosed a problem that I pronate before I do anything else. So if I've actually got a prescription in my shoe, probably better not to mess with that. Just go ahead and try to teach deadlifting on top of it. One thing I will tell you, when I really had you grip that, your back position still wasn't perfect enough for me. It was better, but I would literally put another layer in here. The second thing I'd do is you're a big old guy. We're not even playing with that thing. It's going to be so friggin' heavy that you don't want to put your shoulders in a wrong position. So that might be 70 pounds the first time you do it. I know your body can handle it. And secondly, I'm not going to have you in a bad range of motion lifting it. In a real life scenario, I'm going to give him more range of motion, but I'm also going to expect more weight. Please, when your grandma's doing this thing, if you got a kettlebell that looks like a Christmas tree ornament, don't even bring it up there because her grandkids and her suitcase when she goes to Florida both weigh more than the kettlebell you got her lifting under supervision. So make it heavy so we juice the pelvic floor, we juice the posture, and we really have a reason for lifting with our hips. If they can curl and shrug it, they will. So make it big enough where they would prefer not to do that. Any other questions? Deadlift? Yep. I have a lot of people who can palm the floor. So they'll just lock their knees back and try to deadlift from that. I want the flexible person's knees to bend the exact same amount as him because they've got more range of motion than necessary, but when I give them a lot of load, those locked knees won't help them stabilize. So the reason not to lock the knees is I need what we call a co-contraction. I want the quad and hamstring to go to war and stabilize that knee. The knee is going to softly extend as they stand up, but if I got them locked back, your knee never feels that tug of war, and you're going to need it if we go up in weight. And if you flex forward too much, you're almost juicing a rounded back position. With the deadlift, we're intentionally trying to get the chest down. With the squat, we're intentionally trying to get the chest up. What we can say in a deadlift, we want the tibia as vertical as possible and the back as horizontal as possible, only with a good extension in the back. With a squat, we want the tibia quite a bit forward, but we want the torso up. So it's almost that contrasting. So the more contrast we make between a squat and deadlift, you've seen somebody do a back squat lately? If you look really close, take away the weight, take away the power rack, and just look at their body, it's not a squat or a deadlift. It's a bad version of both where they meet halfway in between. Better to use each what they're designed for. Deadlifting is really going to get you that primitive, fundamental, overall body strength. And remember, the deadlift can sometimes be dependent on your grip strength. The squat's not. The best way to get shoulder integrity is do things that juice that grip. One more deadlift, yep.
The difference between the RDL and the deadlift is just less bend in the knee?
The RDL, Romanian deadlift, to me, they're just a deadlift. The only alternative to a deadlift is something bodybuilders used to do, which was a straight leg deadlift, which was really a hamstring exercise. But there's no reason to do a deadlift and not use the most advantageous mechanical angles. So a lot of people will want to straighten the leg and bias one part of the body. But I think that vertical tibia, and really let the competence of your deadlift be determined by the position and the weight, and not try to vary it up. The variations, single leg, double arm, single arm, that kind of thing are better. But I would probably avoid trying to straighten the knee in the deadlift, because then you're almost using it for a hamstring isolation or even a loaded stretch. I'm not saying you can't do that, but that probably wouldn't fit a lot of the general needs of most people.